Red 2 standing by, all 4 lit and in the green. Welcome back to Bomberman 64. I'm post-commentating this entire episode because I had a few tech problems. For some reason my computer didn't recognise my microphone and it just used the laptop one. Sounds not as good. That is, the sound is not as good, not sounds not as good, because that's not exactly proper grammar. Anyway, switches and bridges is fairly easy to clear. While we're going through this, I have to admit, this is pretty much the only Bomberman game with which I have any sort of experience. Now, I have played a bit of Bomberman on the Game Boy, and I played a bit of Bomberman Land Touch on the DS. However, I don't really remember a lot of that. There were lots of interesting little mini-games with 5 different bombers. Of course, the token female wears pink, and they're sort of set up with the black-coloured Bomberman, a green and a blue one. No, I think there was a green one and a yellow one. The yellow one was the big guy, the green one was the smart guy. It was sort of like a Power Rangers setup. As I said, I don't really remember a lot about that one, sadly. I do remember it being fun. Bomberman on the Game Boy, my brother had that, and I believe he still does. The classic grid-based gameplay, and interestingly, with more vertical stages, you could actually jump off remote bombs, like proper platform jumping, not the bomb jumping we see here. Anyway, we can cross this bridge when we come to it with the aid of our power bombs. I haven't played a lot of multiplayer in the grid-based games either, it's mostly been this one. So it is kind of unfortunate that I don't have a lot of experience with this series proper, and perhaps I should look into playing more of those games because there are plenty of them. Of course, this was always a go-to for multiplayer, and the Nintendo 64 was a haven for fantastic multiplayer games. Nintendo has always been good with local multiplayer. Their online is kind of terrible. I've got to call them out for that. Their online is terrible, but they do local multiplayer so well. Getting this out has admittedly been a tradition for just me and my brother. We haven't really had anybody else playing it like we would with, say, GoldenEye, Super Smash Bros. Games like that. It's just been us having a blast, so to speak. With switches and bridges cleared, Artemis, the first of the masked trio, is our opponent. I do kind of wonder exactly what their backstory was. It would be interesting to discover that, and it's also interesting to find out exactly where Artemis gets all the fireballs she throws. That's her special technique. She can adjust the range based on where you are, so you'll want to be very careful, but there's a certain spread for them, so either keep your distance or approach her from the sides. Now, you have to catch her in a pumped bomb explosion, throw a pump bomb on her head when she's throwing her fireballs. Unfortunately, I just missed that point I mentioned at that particular moment, and defeat her, then defeat her by the target time. She's a fair bit smarter than Sirius. He wasn't much of a threat. So I did take a bit of a hit, but I managed to get that important gold card. Each member of the Masked Trio has a unique gold card to them. Sort of like Sirius did. Anyway, Artemis explodes. She just randomly explodes. Kind of unfortunate, but Bomberman is very happy that he has cleared the level. With that done, let's go back to get the gold cards. We've grabbed the first custom part you're likely to encounter in the game in switches and bridges, so I will be getting another one. Now, in this area, the first gold card is located inside one of the cannons. You will have to destroy them in order to get it because it will actually change, as I will demonstrate at the end of this little segment. Interestingly, as the enemies spawn out of the house, you can keep defeating them, but if you throw a bomb into the window and blow it up, you will not be able to get points for the kills. They won't count towards the 30 enemy mark. Anyway, you've seen where to get the remote bombs, and here's the location where I found the gold card first time. And this was where I found it in a more successful run. That cannon may take a precise throw to destroy. Anyway, I've talked a little bit about multiplayer, and that has always been pretty much the standard for Bomberman games. The single player isn't necessarily fantastic, but there's usually good multiplayer. Interestingly, I think Bomberman Hero actually did away with the multiplayer. Bomberman Hero was sort of the follow-up to this. Bomberman 64 The Second Attack was considered the true sequel. And if you watch just for a moment as I'm diverting a little bit, you can watch me have tremendous rubber arms and not quite make that throw, so I thought you couldn't actually access that bridge from this area. I thought you needed power bombs, which you can, but you can actually get there with a normal throw, so I decided to do a few spectacular motions isn't the right word, form spectacular plans to try and get there. Didn't quite work, as you can see, but interestingly enough, it does show off that there is a degree of creativity in Bomberman 64. With enough bombs, you can create some very interesting staircases. And in fact, at certain points, the game actually does expect you to make some creative staircases. Of course, it can backfire when you try and do something clever like that. So eventually, we wound up getting over there because I did actually make a proper throw. While you can head off to your right as you cross the bridge, I was a bit surprised when that one fell over. Just a couple of enemies to defeat there. We're mostly stuffing around because I'm keeping track of how many enemies I've killed in order to get that particular gold card at this point. If you like, you can bomb those fish when they're in the water as well. Apologies for just sort of pausing there. But yes, it was a bit of a surprise that Bomberman Hero actually did away with multiplayer because, well, to me, multiplayer's always been a great experience and I've liked local multiplayer a lot. I don't necessarily like online multiplayer that much, mostly because, as I said, Nintendo is pretty horrible with online multiplayer. Anyway, third gold card is up here. You can't get it if you press the switch in this area, so be very careful. I suppose it's interesting. Well, I suppose interesting in the sense that I'm not necessarily a very social person a lot of the time. I like to keep to myself and do my own thing, but with video games I do believe there is kind of a social element, and I do like a few multiplayer geared games along the way. For the most part, I enjoy the Super Smash Bros. Series. I do like having the options to play on my own, which is why I'll confess I was rather disappointed with some of the so-called options in Smash Bros. Ultimate. A lot of them were really, really lame as far as single player went. Not to mention I did find World of Light rather repetitive. The multiplayer's good, but it's nice having an option for people doing single player. And stop. See that entryway up there? There is actually a difficult to find custom part in there. How do we get it? Well, it's not through the following methods. So back to what I was saying about local multiplayer. I've had some fantastic memories from that. There have been so many great occasions across a whole range of different games. Competing with friends in Mario Kart, especially, I'll admit that I don't like the series much, but there are some fun moments, such as when you get to be that one player in Wario Stadium who's able to drop the lightning bolt on people just as they're crossing the bridge, or just some of the other shenanigans you wind up doing in some of the later games. I'll admit that despite what I say, I have enjoyed Mario Kart 8 Deluxe sometimes. Much as I like F-Zero, it's not always great for multiplayer because you need a bit of skill for it. It's not something you can just pick up and play and have fun with. Most of the time, Mario Kart is like that, and I'll give it points in that field. But my best memories have been in things like Donkey Kong 64, GoldenEye, Bomberman 64. Those have been just phenomenal. There have been so many fantastic moments. The auto-aim created some very odd moments in GoldenEye. One time, I'd managed to sneak up behind my brother in a 4-player match. I was going to wind up shooting him, but the auto-aim wound up somehow tracking one of my friends who was nearby, but probably not a threat. Anyway, that little bomb jump technique is how you get in there. And there's our custom part. Can be tough to get, but once you figure it out, it is actually pretty easy. And then you can bomb the bridge and go from there. Now, I will get back to my multiplayer story as we talk about some of the disasters I've had in this episode, but going down here you can actually talk to Sirius and he will tell you about the masked trio, as well as getting into that warehouse. So yeah, there have been so many stupid moments like that, a lot of ridiculous shenanigans playing Donkey Kong 64's Battle Arena. I probably enjoyed that a bit more than Monkey Smash, sorry. But really there have been so many great moments just from those multiplayer focused games, catching up with friends and having fun in the good old days, and some of those stupid shenanigans you got up to. I used to be very good at the man with the golden gun in GoldenEye, for example. Anyway, now that we've got through all that, let's have a look at some of the disasters I had against Artemis. Now this one wound up going pretty smoothly, for the most part. Pretty decent fight, I'm looking to do okay. But the sort of thing that usually winds up making me have a lot of trouble in multiplayer, that whole "it seemed like a good idea at the time" mentality, winds up backfiring on me a bit here. So, done a bit of damage, managed to get a couple of hearts from her, still trying to get that bomb on her head. Pull it off there and I've lost the heart. You'd think I'd be careful, but unfortunately, yeah, you'd be wrong. Did I learn from that? No. Just watch. Now, one of the important things to do is to try not to tackle Artemis head on when hitting her on the head with a pumped bomb. Did I learn that? No. And yes, my stupidity got myself a game over. Now, interesting point to note about Artemis's attacks. They can actually go through that central pillar. As you can see in the slow motion here, it's a funky little fire ring effect I added just for the sake of it. It didn't quite go as smoothly as I hoped, but yes, you can see that it goes straight through the pillar. And this one was the worst, because I dodged her attacks, but you'll see I'm nowhere near it and the bomb just explodes in my hands. It obviously has a much bigger hitbox than I thought, and of course getting a game over made me a bit frustrated. So of course we get to see it in slow motion idiot cam. Well, maybe not idiot, that's a bit unfair to me, but yes, I am in multiplayer the sort of person who will manage to screw up, create a whole lot of interesting disasters, but that's part of why I find local multiplayer fun, really. You can have a laugh with friends over those ridiculously stupid things and they become the stuff of legends. Like that auto-aim incident I mentioned, basically. Things like that are just fantastic and you can't replicate that with online. Not as easily anyway. But that's it for now. I'll see you next time.